They don't even come in time to try to share something about the Bible. I don't know anything about that. I was saying on that midweek tour reading I did or facilitated this week, you read Genesis and the cartoons and the um, coloring books and the church stories taught you two by two, and they never taught seven by seven. But even when it was two by two, it was like one little piggy and then one little male piggy. And
Thank
it
you.
was literally two sets of each, like two females and two males. But you can read right past it because folks are reading. And it was seven deer, for example, male deer and seven female deer. So some of that stuff people read right past, but that habit of reading, uh, it'll pay off. Start noticing some patterns and intricacies. So it's a good thing. Uh, what else has happened? How have y'all been?
Been on my search for Bigfoot.
Bigfoot, huh?
Shabbat shalom.
Barcelona.
Brother Nick, how you doing up there in all that snow, man?
Man, I'm about to build me a masonry heater at this point.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Big, nice stoves. Fuel efficient one.
Yeah, my uncle runs a pecan farm down in Arkansas. He gave me like a whole rick of wood. So I've been burning, burning, burning. Now I think I came back like 2 weeks ago. I'm almost halfway done with all the wood. It's crazy.
I've bought 16 cords this year so far.
Yeesh.
And I'm thinking it may not last the way this winter, the weather's been going. So, might be my first year doing 20.
Well, for those who don't know, this is Brother Nick, and um, for some godforsaken reason, blessing, I would say, he moved from Jamaica to Florida to Buffalo, New York, or the outskirts. And when he told me that's what the Creator told him to do, I could only verify it in part because we met each other, and we met each other right as I was leaving New York, and I was like, that sound like something the Almighty be doing. That actually sound, but just the regular man's face, yeah, not sunny and 75 every day to go to shovel, but
Well,
hallelujah.
not my will, but his
Not
will.
thy will, not my will, thy will. That's right, man. That's what you gotta do. That is what you gotta
Mhm.
do. So hallelujah for that. Jordan, yes, sir.
It's just a random question before we get to anything tonight. When I was like reading a little bit in Exodus, this is in chapter 4, verse 6. Like as you talk about, like the more you start to read it, you like things pop out. Verse 6, it talks about, how Moshe was asking Yahuwah, like, how will the elders of Yasharel know that, it's you? That's led him to do this. And so he gave him three different signs, let his rod down. And the second one was when he told him to put his hand in his bosom. And it said it was leprous. I think it was like leprous like snow. And I'm wondering like how would they know what snow is if I don't know if it snows in Egypt, unless maybe it snowed in like the mountaintop. So I was just wondering, I don't know if you ever came across that thought, and I was just wondering um about
Yeah.
that.
As far as I understand, it does snow in that region.
Okay.
Messiah said, let your flight, Jerusalem and Egypt is not geographically too far apart, right? But in like Matthew, maybe 24, he said, let not your flight be in the winter or on a Sabbath day. So it's something that they seem to have understood about the conditions of winter. And then sometimes, from what I understand, uh, places that generally would be warm, high in the mountains, would still get snow. So I think people would be accustomed to seeing it. Uh, but you could also look up the word snow and find out it is talking about something different because I never actually looked it up. But in my understanding of it is that those regions still do get snow. I don't think they don't have winter at all. So, yeah, good question.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any thoughts, just check-ins at all? Oh, shoot, you know what? Damn, huh? Mhm.
Is Naya gonna be on tonight?
You know what? I haven't seen Naya in a long time.
See, she went to Africa. She ain't been, she ain't been back. It was just 3 weeks for me.
I know, right? Yeah, maybe my Isha texted a flyer. I don't know. But yeah, they may. I mean, I know her father's. Texas, her father's flyer, so he might join her. Yeah. And Joshua, did you make that trip, or you still driving, or what you doing?
No, we ain't leave yet.
Oh,
I just finished making something to eat for the kids, and I'm unpacking boxes.
oh, okay. I want you to be driving and trying to navigate here. But yeah, we'll go ahead and push to get started here. It's at least a little after 8, and then anybody else who's able to join in, I guess will. Um, hopefully this screen acts correct. Might not. What we're doing apparently and more intentionally this session is we're going to be looking at going to be more intentional about looking at man's um, internally versus some of the other concepts that we've studied in the last few iterations. And generally, I think I explained that one of the reasons I took the course of action to share some of the information that was shared in our previous studies, because I think it's important for people to begin to develop a passion for the scripture. And one way, there's probably many ways, but one way that you can develop that passion for studying and reading the scriptures is to appreciate the range of what it discusses. And when you look into the range of what it discusses, the Bible covers a lot of different topics and subjects. So in some of the previous iterations, we looked at, for example, the dangers of disobedience, which is more like dealing with, individuals, tendencies and behaviors. We also looked at some of the thoughts that are in Genesis, and we looked at the trees in the garden, and we looked at different concepts to kind of draw you into a practice of being more intentional about study. I know that I was talking to a dear friend of mine about 2 weeks ago. We were remodeling this kitchen, and he said, "You would have never told me, or I would have never thought that when I picked this book up when I was 18, that I would still be looking at it 30 plus years or 28 plus years later, and it's still showing me stuff that I never even seen before." There isn't books that do that. Like you can read, a book on such and such, and your life may change, and then the information may look different, but it's probably not necessarily constantly revealing different things to you the way that this text does. And the things that it reveals, while there are some mysteries in it, there are some deep secrets in it, there are uh, prophecies in it, there's also quite a bit of things that got to do with you, right? And the things that have to do with you is when you shine it in your face and it becomes a mirror, it reveals that your very intention is evil. And most of us don't like it. So, I mean, some of us get into this space where people began to be atheists or people began to be agnostic. And then they kind of make up this stuff where it's like, no, there's no way you can really know about the creator and they began to distance themselves. And I think we studied in one session, and the way that we examined that one session was that the kind of the nature of what the way the creator can present himself, the way he can present himself is similar to the way an idol can present themselves. Like, for example, idols don't talk. And we read different scriptures in time past where the Most High will ghost you and go silent. And you can pray and you can beg. And he said, even though you stretch out your ears, I will not hear you. Well, what type of deity or being who knows all and sees all cannot actually hear? You understand what I'm saying? Like when he says, my eyes are in every place, beholding the evil and the good, can he really not see? But he told the people of Israel, I will not see you. I will, he said in Isaiah 59, I will hide my face from you. What face? And how is he going to hide a face that sees everything? But what it's explaining is that as he interacts with people, and people are desperately wicked. And we've studied, again, we in the last few sessions, we kind of went across the map in terms of the depth of scripture. But I want to, in this series here, I want to be more intentional about sharing more about the inward man, because what tends to happen is people get real puffed up with 6 scriptures that they memorize. Told you weren't supposed to celebrate Christmas, but you over here doing that old wicked stuff on the side, or you struggling with this thing in your heart, but you point the finger because it's much more easier to point the finger than to examine yourself internally. And that is the deceit that is attached to the heart, or, in other words, the mind. So we are going to, well, I was going to say we're going to embarrass the newcomer and ask her to put herself on the spot and say, "Show," but we won't do that to you. We won't do that just yet. But welcome, pleasure to have you here. Generally, there's quite a few more. Well, I don't know quite. It's probably like 4 or 5 more sisters that come in, but we've been offline for the last 3 weeks managing family transitions and etc. So we're just kind of getting started back up with this next session. At some point, this computer is going to do what I ask it to do and stop doing what it wants to do and show the presentation on the screen. So sometimes I gotta keep playing around with it. But any thoughts on what I'm expressing before we open up officially into the course of our study on the heart? Any thoughts on that at all?
I mean, I don't know if you're going to talk about it in this series, but I believe Yahusha had talked about dealing with the log at the 2x4 in your own eye versus the speck in someone else's eye. Basically, like what I take that is staying in your own lane in terms of focusing on you, because we're wicked. We just don't like to openly show it because of the shame and guilt that it'll bring upon us. So really looking forward to this, and feel like this is right on time.
Hallelujah. Look at this screen doing all type of stuff. Can y'all see the screen behind me? And then,
It's like,
It's like a black screen right now.
oh man, it showed the image like I'm in front of the presentation. Like,
Yeah.
this thing deceiving me itself. So I'm trying to get sometimes if I don't, well, I'm not a Microsoft guy, but if we'll just start without it. But if it doesn't, sometimes it won't show the
Yeah, it's like it's going in and it's like you're trying to share, but then it closes.
yeah, if I was into Microsoft and had PowerPoint, then it would just show, but it's not doing all that. So I'm gonna just let it do what it's doing. All right, so what we'll do is generally, sometimes we open up in prayer, but in this course we're gonna examine this ideal of guarding your heart. At some point, it'll catch up and I'll share it on the screen more directly. So can you see anything on the screen or no?
Yeah, we see the PowerPoint now.
Oh, okay. But it's not in show mode. It's
Yeah,
just
it's not
oh,
in show mode. It's like
at some point it'll catch up with itself. Sometimes maybe I should email uh the owners of Google and complain. Sometimes we start out with a prayer, but as again, some of the Hebrew culture and circles have said in, we start out with reading of a psalm. So if one of you don't mind, we'll start off in Psalms chapter 32, and we're gonna read verses 1 through 11. Psalms chapter 32, and we're gonna read verses 1 through 11.
got it. Unless Jay, you want to start us off this time, bro?
Yeah, I'll take it this time. Give you a break.
All right, there you go. You got
All
it.
right. Psalm 32, the joy of forgiveness. Blessed is he.
It's not the New World Translation, is it?
The New King James?
No, you're not reading the New World Translation, are you?
No.
Okay, all right, just.
Mm-mm. I don't even know what that version
I
is.
mean, you cut your hair, you might have, you never know. But all right, no, all right, let's go.
Blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man whom the master does not impute iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones grew old through my groaning all the day long. For the day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My vitality was turned into the drought of summer. I acknowledged my sin to you, and my iniquity I have not hidden. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the master, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. Selah. For this cause, everyone who is godly shall pray to you. In a time when you may be found, surely in a flood of great waters, they shall not come near him. You are my hiding place. You shall preserve me from trouble. You shall surround me with the songs of deliverance. Selah. I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will guide you with my eye. Do not be like the horse or like the mule, which have no understanding, which must be harnessed with bit and bridle, else they will not come near you. Many sorrows shall be to the wicked, but he who trusts in the master, mercy shall surround him. Be glad in the master and rejoice, you righteous, and shout for joy, all you upright in heart.
Let's say hallelujah.
Yeah.
So we are examining this concept of guarding the heart. We have paid quite a bit of attention to different thoughts and study over the last several series. As I mentioned, we did look at, trees in the garden. We looked at the dangers of disobedience. We looked at, a bunch of different topics. I probably won't name them all right off the top of my mind. And what we want to do now is really just kind of dive into this ideal around guarding the heart. And as we look into this kind of ideal and concept around guarding the heart, the premise of this is that we want to be more intentional as individuals about reflecting what the Creator desires of us, and as well be more intentional about self-examination. So I always like to share the learning objectives. And when I say learning objectives, to me, this is as this particular series of thought or study was being designed, what did I have in mind to communicate? And really, when I say I have in mind, as I'm digging into the well of the scriptures as if it's water, so to speak, like a well of water, and drawing out and distributing to those who, saying well for everybody, but, just distributing or sharing what I've found or re-examined or studied or my experiences. These are the thoughts that I am attempting to convey. So one is that I want individuals to understand the ideal or idea or the concept of the heart. That's important because the text uses that language quite a bit. So what is the concept that is being expressed with the heart? Another objective, and then this is part A to more or less what will ultimately be a three-part series. We won't do it all in this series because I'm going to jump to some other things and come back. The second is to identify and overcome external and internal threats to the heart. And there are a bunch of external and internal threats to the heart. The external ones are the things that are outward facing in the world of men, business, politics, sports, religion, etc. They practice this thing called a SWOT analysis. And what a SWOT analysis is they look at the strengths, they look at the weaknesses, they look at the opportunities, and they look at the threats. And the reality is that the strengths, cool, nobody wants to really fuss about the strengths. Those are things you're good at. The weaknesses are the things that you need to improve. The opportunities are the things that you can take advantage of in the future. But the threats are the things that are going to be to your detriment. So in that vein, we're going to look at in the series, but some of it we're going to discover in this particular session, the internal and external threats to the heart. And externally, again, weapons of mass distractions. There's a lot of things that are happening in the world at large. And some grow up in an environment, I didn't grow up in that environment, thankfully, that my lens looks different than the lens of the person growing up in this day and age. So, for example, boys was boys when I was a kid. Like I knew you was a boy. There was no question about that. And girls were girls. And then we chased the girls and then they chased us and we played freeze tag. And that was fun. And we played hide and go seek. And then we did all this games and it was fun. You didn't pick the girl on your basketball team or your football team because she was a girl, right? And in this society, you have experts, mind you. They call themselves, they say they have a master's degree. Like you're a master, meaning you have exhausted all of the learning to become a master. And you can't tell the difference between a boy and a girl because they got new rules now. Weapons of mass distraction. So these external threats are important to examine because why? You can't watch any series of television or internet or be on your phone where somebody's not parading you around with a bunch of advertisements and advertisements to get you to come on this side, believe this ideal. And that's an external threat. Now, the internal threats is you have your own definitions of the way life should be. Like until some of us came into the Bible and really from a lens that someone, whether the internet or whatever have you, someone agitated you about, meaning something not right here. You began to examine and said, man, son, I don't think we should be celebrating this. I got some questions about this. And you asked those things in some religious circle and something didn't add up. So you began to explore a little more. And those internal threats still carry with you. It's the things that you struggle with, the things that you don't want to tell everybody. And nobody has to get into confession here on the phone or the medium, but the external and internal. And then lastly, in this series, we're going to cultivate and look at cultivating practices for maintaining a pure and guarded heart. Much more difficult to do in this environment, but we want to encourage a pure and guarded heart. So those are our objectives. Anybody have any thoughts about those objectives before we continue?
Yeah, I would just say on objective number 3, that kind of, I think that'll answer my question of like, how does one master their mind or their heart? So I'm looking forward to maybe some of the principles that you will lay out and just line it up with scripture. So objective number 3 looks very interesting to me.
Yeah, yes, sir. Cool, cool.
I was going to throw out there. I like the SWOT analysis thought process. Because like when I look at a weakness, even versus a threat, generally we look at strengths and weaknesses as internal, and opportunities and threats as external. And so, looking at what's within sometimes as a deficiency or a weakness, it gives me a different context as opposed to the external kind of threats we view. So, I'm definitely going to use that and work through that lens. I appreciate that analogy.
Certainly, certainly. And peace to you, Brother Brandon. Jordan, yes, sir.
Sorry, one more question. Uh, will you kind of also dive into clean and unclean with this as well, with the heart?
Ultimately, we will in the series, um, and some of it will peer into in this particular one also.
Okay, thank you.
So our introduction and framing in our agenda, discussion and word study, we'll do. The lecture may be 75 minutes, maybe a little more, less than that, and then we'll do recap and close out. So, for those who are new to us, generally we raise hands, step up, step back. Definitely encourage people to have their cameras on. I mean, some people think when you are facilitating, you like talking to black screens. Not the case for me. Some people don't mind. If you are indisposed or something, that understand that. One mic, it's not hundreds of us on here, so we have a little room to chat. But the more crowded it gets on some days, again, we just want to share the microphone. That's what it means in terms of be bold, be brief, and then all hands in. I don't mind teaching, facilitating, but yeah, I'm also encouraging other people to share their thoughts. So what we'll start off doing, and this will be under the pretense that folks are not necessarily driving or preoccupied with something else. But I want you to, I'm gonna split us up in a couple groups, and I want you to define the word guard. Because we're looking at this ideal of guarding the heart. And if you are going to guard the heart, or in one instance, yeah, I need to guard my fish over here. See, my fish just keep disappearing. In one instance, when you are guarding the heart, or you have a guard dog, or any type of guarding, it has an implication. So I want to split us into groups, and we're just going to examine this concept behind the word guard. And you can look it up in the Blue Letter Bible. You can define it. The groups are just randomly assigned, however Zoom does it. But I want you to just spend about 15 minutes and look at the word guard. You can look it up in your Bible dictionary, on an app, on a cell phone, whatever you want to do, and then just share in a small group discussion the ideal of the word guard. So I'm going to split us into groups. We're going to have about 12, 15 minutes to look at that. Share whatever you find in your group, and then we're going to come back and report out on the word guard. So the rooms will be open, and you can just join as fitting.
Am I in the right room?
Second result. In this space of keeping things out, like in guarding the hawk deer, as I was mentioning, um, it's it's to fence in, to guard, to protect. And I think one of the first times you come across this term is that he gave Adam this ideal of, tending to this garden and then protecting the garden and kind of making sure that things were all right. And it was that same kind of framework that you're responsible for this, right? So let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 3, and we're going to start diving into the scriptures. We're going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 3 because I'm talking about this concept of guarding. But I want us to keep in mind when we think of the word guard that it has a framework in which it operates in, right? Like the old movies back in the 80s when you watch, any old 80s movies, like a Eddie Murphy or Jim Carrey. I don't know all of the movies, but they would normally have like this Doberman Pinscher. It was like that was the dog of the 80s. And then sometime during the 90s or 2000, they started having Rottweilers and Pit Bulls. But in the old movies, when a thief was breaking into your house, you'd be on watch out for the Doberman Pinscher. I mean, and he would chase the thief and they'd be running and trying to outsmart him and give him some type of substance to put him to sleep, etc. But that animal's job was to make sure nothing happened. Now let's take a look at this concept, and we'll start in Deuteronomy 3, and then we'll read verses 1. We may go to 6, we may stop a little early, but yeah, Deuteronomy 3 and verses 1 through 6.
I got it.
Yes, sir.
In Deuteronomy 3. And then we turned and went up the way to Bashan, and Og, sovereign of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei.
So wherever he was, this Og, he came out. Just pay attention to this. Keep going.
And Yahuwah said to me, do not fear him, for I have given him and all his people and his land into your hand. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, sovereign of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So Yahuwah your Elohim also gave into our hands Og, sovereign of Bashan, with all his people, and we struck him until he had no survivors remaining.
Okay.
And we captured all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we did not take from them, 60 cities, all the district of Argob, the reign of Og in Bashan. All these cities were fenced with high walls, gates, and bars, besides a great many unwalled towns.
So
And
all of these cities were what?
they were fenced with high walls, gates, and bars, besides a great many unwalled towns.
Meaning they were well guarded. So if you have fences, now remember Cain, as we studied in one discourse, Cain and his children were the fathers of metal, ironwork, etc. So they were also the ones practicing instruments of war. They were helping to perpetuate violence in the earth. So these ideal of having bars, wherever you get metal from in the land and in the mountains, they condense this down into a bar and say, look, man, nobody can come in here. You put people in prison behind bars, so they are guarded. They can't just get out easily. So Og and these kings of Bashan, they came out of the walls to fight the people. At least that's the way it seems to present itself. And it said all of these cities were fenced in with gates, with walls, with bars, besides the unwalled towns, a great many. So if the Israelite was going through the unwalled cities first and knocking them down, that would probably give cause to come out the walls. Some kings, we not leaving the walls no matter what, because some of these walls were 20 feet of stone thick. Y'all can't get in here. We're not even worried about that. Y'all can't get in here. But notice this ideal of guard to protect. These folks had high walls, and we just, for exaggeration's sake, we're going to say the walls was 40 foot high. I don't know. I'm just exaggerating my point. Then they had gates, so you need to be able to get in and out the city. But the wood beams that made the gates, they probably cut down 10 trees, somehow stapled them together into a 20-foot thick wall. You're not getting in through the gates either. And then bars, all of this to keep the city fenced in or guarded. All right. You can read verse 6 and then we'll go into Joshua chapter 6 and 1.
Verse 6 says, and we put them under the ban, as we did to Sihon, sovereign of Heshbon, putting the men, the women, and the children of every city under the ban.
So a stronger force than that power came and destroyed. So they fenced in cities were designed to protect them, but in this case, they did not successfully pull it off because the Creator was with the Israel coming out the wilderness. Let's look at Joshua 6 and then we'll start at verse 1.
I'll take that one.
Yes, sir.
Now Jericho was securely shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the master said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hand, its king and the mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all you men of war. You shall go all around the city once. This you shall do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. But the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets.
All right, so we are not going into the depth of the story, but this is what we do know by reading 6 and 1. And Jericho was straitly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went in and none went out. And then it says that they shall march around the walls. So when you were reading earlier in Genesis and it said Cain builded a city or Nimrod built a city, if you were pillaging and creating so much war amongst the people, you don't want people just easily being able to walk up on you in a tent. You understand what I'm saying? So they had to guard where they were. So this concept of guarding has to do with high walls, maintaining what's inside, keeping what you don't want outside. Now, again, the Almighty told them, listen, march around and them walls gonna fall down. Now, when my children were young, they used to watch this little TV show called Veggie Tales, and they had little vegetables playing like they was Bible characters, patriarchs and individuals. And one of my favorite ones was when the tomatoes was trying to knock down a wall of Jericho. And then I remember the song because it's distinctly etched in my mind that the people of Jericho in this cartoon imagery is they're vegetables. It's Veggie Tales, right? And the people of Jericho were singing, it's plain to see that your brains is very small to think marching is going to be knocking down our walls. So they were confident in the way that their city was guarded. They said, look, our walls aren't going to knock down. But they marched and they marched and they marched, and we see that those fences came down. When we take a look at Genesis chapter 3, yes, sir. You're going to wait till I get
What?
smooth into it, man. They're going to raise their hand.
Oh, no. Before you went to the, I was trying to catch you.
No, you're good.
What was that? What was that word that you said about the fence?
I think it's Lahakdir. Let me look it back up. I'll share it with you. It should be actually pulled from Genesis, where he told them to keep the garden. I think that's the word pulled from Genesis. You can look it up and fact check me.
It was just something similar, just because on that Joshua 6:1, where it say that Jericho was shut up tight. That word is really saying that it was shut up and it was shut up. Like in the English, it's giving you it was shut up tight, but in the Hebrew, to give emphasis, they kind of double up on it.
Right.
And so I thought the word was what you said. It was a different word, but it's kind of like the same concept. But I just thought that, I always take note of those little double ups whenever they talk about, like, in the Hebrew, how it gives that emphasis or whatever. So I just had seen it there and thought that was a word you said, but I guess it was a different.
Yeah, it should be keep, and it should be in Genesis. It might be 2:15. Let me just double check. Man, put him in a garden. Samar. I'll find it, but the ideal is to fence in, but let me go back and is that it?
I mean, if you don't gotta find it, I just thought that this was the same word. You could keep going if you want to.
I'm about to go on a whole word study, but yeah, I'll look for it and find it. But I think it pulls from Genesis. So in Genesis chapter 3, we have taken a look at this before. I'm afraid to click the screen because it might take it off the presentation. But in Genesis chapter 3 and then verse 6, and then we'll look at verse 16. Because I think we shared this before, and I want to go over the premise of what's being laid out again, because something is being shared here in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 6. We're just going to read 6 and verse 13. So Genesis 3, verses 6, particularly in verse 16.
I got it.
Mm-hmm.
So verse 6, so when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. And go down to
And
verse
then, yep.
in verse 13. And Yahuwah said to the woman, what is this that you have done? The woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate.
So here in this text, I don't want to pull it off the screen because it may not continue to show. But the woman saw that it was pleasant and it was something that she desired. And when you look at that word desire, it means delighted in, lusted after, coveted, to behold and looked at it as pleasant. And essentially, that this concept is pulling from this ideal that instruction was given, and you found that I found something better than the instruction because it's what I desired. So your desire is what the Bereshit is sharing, is the way that the heart first started being unprotected. This desire. So you look up the word, it has to deal with chama, it has to deal with covetousness. It has to deal with to desire or to lust after or to find pleasant or precious, to be desirable, to take pleasure in, to delight in. So the heart began to, in the Bereshit, began to look at, I want to do things this way. And I think this might be better for me than the direct instruction of just to obey. Now let's look at verse 13, because she saw, and then again, we won't look into all of the words. If I pull it off the screen, it won't show us what I would want it to. But when you have the opportunity, pay close attention to not only the word desire here, to make one wise. And what this is saying is to make an independent decision different from the instruction that you were given. Meaning, not Yah's will be done. I can decide for myself what's good for me. This is the root of the heart being deceived. I can decide myself what's good for me. I do not need the Creator telling me what to do. I don't need my parents telling me what to do. I don't need my husband telling me what to do. I don't need the Torah telling me what to do. I don't need my boss telling me what to do. I can decide for myself. So when you look up the word wise in this text, it should point that out to you. If it doesn't, bring it back to my attention. Now let's look at Jeremiah 2 and then verse 11. So we see in the Bereshit that the desire for one to be wise. Oh, do we read verse 13 there? Yeah, verse 13 in that same text back in Genesis. Sorry, Genesis 3:13. We didn't read that. Y'all moving a little slow. I'll read it. It says, and Yahweh Elohim said unto the woman, what is it that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. So we notice that she saw that it was desire to make one wise, and then her interaction with the Creator said, the serpent did it. Now, again, you can look into this. We won't go into it deeply today, but I'll say, again, whatever else the serpent is, I'm not sitting here and I'm not even going to argue with nobody over it. I'm going to just tell you this. I never talked to a snake, and I'm not going to tell you snakes talk. But I will tell you that the ancient Middle East viewed the serpent as the inner heart of man. That's the way the ancients viewed it. If you look at any Egyptian ancient relics or the ancient Middle East, they connected the serpent with the inner heart of man. Now, if it was a talking dragon that used to slide around, now he walk on his feet, man, that's between the creator and the interpreters. I'm not getting into that. What I'm pointing out to you is the way that the devil appears to you. Now, I'm not limiting you how he can appear, but I'm telling you, the serpent beguiled Eve. In one sense, you can say she was drawn away of her own lust. That's what the prophet James said.
Mm.
And when your own desire draws you away, man, she looked real fine. Hey, man, don't listen, man. Keep your eyes focused over here. Well, I think my man should look like this and act like this. Man, keep your eyes focused on what the text tells you. Or, man, it's just one Sabbath day. Man, they said they're going to pay me triple time. Well, what's in your heart that you would go violate what the Creator asked to do? Something got to be there to be extracted out of there. So notice Jeremiah 2, verse 11. This should be the right text. Jeremiah 2, verse 11. Now, again, you can look into it, but in my studies, I'm not saying what else is not. So I don't even have the capacity to be fussing with nobody about that. Oh, no, it's a real snake, and snakes talk. And listen, they used to have feet. Now they crawl in their belly. Listen, go ahead. Not even fussing with you about it. But I will say, one of the ways that the serpent appears is the inner conscience. That's what the Middle Eastern people taught. It's you. It's your inner conscience. It's the thing that you wrestle with, the thing that'll convince your mind when you know you shouldn't be doing it. Your mind will justify complete wickedness. And then the more you tell your conscience, because you can tell your conscience has to be trained. It's just not going to constantly, you can kill your conscience. Again, I don't walk around murdering people, but the first time you shoot a person and kill them is probably really hard. The 20th time you do it, I don't think you think about it twice. You can train your conscience that this don't even bother you. You can do it and go drink a beer. That's the way the conscience works. So Jeremiah chapter 2, and then we'll pick it up at verse 11.
I got it.
Yes, sir.
So verse 11, this is Jeremiah chapter 2. It says, has a nation changed its mighty ones, which are not mighty ones? But my people have changed my esteem for that which does not profit. Be amazed, O heavens, at this, and be frightened, be utterly dried up, declares Yahuwah. For my people have done two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, to hew out themselves cisterns, cracked cisterns, which do not hold water. Is Israel a servant? Was he born in the house? Why is he given to plunder?
So again, take notice that they have done two evils. And he said, have the nations changed their gods, which are yet no gods? So there are no other deities, right? This is apparently what this is expressing. And he said, the people have done two evils. One of the evils that they did is they sought in their own desire, in their own heart. Because again, I say this before when we study the trees in the garden study, sometimes people are led to think that this ideal of idols, like Israelites, Hebrews, even the patriarchs, like they were just worshiping wooden statues. No, 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 no. They wouldn't have wasted their time doing that. Those wooden statues, or those little trees, or those little deities were always connected to some economic gain or fortune. They wouldn't do it otherwise. And it's the same thing today. No correlation. When I did the flyer a long time ago, I wasn't thinking about what people do today, which is Valentine's Day. Look, I stopped celebrating that when I was probably 17, 18. So I'm not even, I'm so far removed from that thought. But the deity or the concept behind it hasn't changed. Worship this activity. Man, buy all this chocolate and celebrate your love for such and such. Who get paid off that? When you go get the chocolate, the manufacturer who sent it to the distributor, they sold it to them already. They stuck with the leftover chocolate. But the chocolate got to come from somewhere, and it got to come from some place, some coca leaf or some coca tree or coca farm where they produce chocolate, and it's probably not wherever they're selling the chocolate. So now you got to go make sure that these trees are in your possession. Has the nations changed their gods? Nope, it's been the same thing. Every religious festival that you're aware of, and I don't live in Jamaica or Tobago or Trinidad and this, that, third, but they celebrate Carnival. You trace it all down, it had to do with some money being made. People dressing up with feathers and Mardi Gras. This had to do with commerce. So that hasn't changed. But he said that the people has done this thing where they're essentially pouring water when they're saying they're thirsty into spaghetti strainers. And the spaghetti strainer don't hold no water. It literally go in and go out. Notice this, Jeremiah chapter 17, something we should be familiar. Jeremiah chapter 17. And we will start at verse 19. We should be familiar with this, but if you're not,
So are we reading verse 17 through 19? Or are we going to chapter 17?
Verse 17, chapter 17 of Jeremiah, verse 19.
So chapter 17, verse 19 says, and thus Yahuwah said unto me, and thus Yahuwah said to me, go and stand in the gate of the children of the people, by which the sovereigns of Yehuda come in, and by which they go out.
Jalen, I messed that up. Chapter 17, verse 8 and 9.
Verse 8 and 9.
Yes, sir. You can start at 7. 17:7. We'll start there.
Okay. So verse 7 says, blessed is the man who trusts in Yahuwah, and whose trust is Yahuwah. For he shall be like a tree planted by the waters, which spread out its roots by the river, and does not see when heat comes. And his leaf shall be green, and in the year of drought he is not anxious, nor does he cease from yielding fruit.
So this man that is trusting in the Almighty, he should be like a tree planted in the river of water. I shared this before, pretty much when I teach on the Better Sheet, I may share this and you may hear me say it over and over. The tree of knowledge of good and evil, the text never says that it disappeared anywhere. It only said that he put a flaming fire around the tree of life. Now, he kicked them out the garden, but it never said the tree went anywhere. Now, here, the man who's doing right shall be like a tree planted by rivers of water. Anytime a tree or any plant for that matter is planted by enough water, it'll constantly yield fruit and grow produce. Verse 9.
Verse 9, the heart is crooked above all, and desperately sick. Who shall know it?
The heart is crooked, or the heart is deceitful, or the heart is misleading, or the heart is tricky. And it says above all. Now notice the correlation here. The serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Notice this. The serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Did it ever call the serpent a beast of the field?
No.
It just said it was more clever than any beast. Now, keep in mind this. Again, I always say this, PG, again. I'm not God. Y'all know that. I'm me. I'm here. I'm in DC. I don't have any majestic kind of powers to do all the stuff that he does. However, the chameleon can blend in a tree and change the color of a tree. The serpent was more crafty than that.
Mm.
Then you have like a praying mantis, and I don't know what the name of this thing is, but you actually have an insect, which is not a beast, but get the point. You have an insect that looks like a tree leaf or a branch. And when a predator walks up on him, he'll just get real stiff like this and won't move. A possum will play dead if it's being attacked. That's a very clever ruse to make sure that whatever is messing with you would leave you alone.
Mm.
Then you got animals that puff themselves up to make themselves look way bigger than they are to scare off their prey. A cat is extremely sneaky. A fox, clever. A fox is real clever. But the heart is deceitful above all things. I mean, can we see the correlation between that and the serpent? Again, I'm not, if people walk around believing and talking snakes, I'm not discrediting you. Knock yourself out. What I'm talking about is the way the heart operates. Your very mind will trick you into doing something wicked. Tell your conscience, like, no, no, it'll be okay. Like, I've been good for 6 months. God ain't gonna mind if I just do this one time.
Mm.
Be merciful. That's not. I don't normally do this type of thing, and you off doing that thing. Your mind will trick you into doing that.
And
What is that
Jeremiah
telling you?
stresses that so many times. This
Oh, he
ain't the
does.
only time.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. He stresses that. And most of the prophets stress that. Because once we take our mind out of looking things like they look at it in the West, like again, like the way we were taught things was like, two by two, and then the talking snake, and then people ate an apple. Well, that type of embedded language does something to the mind. But if your mind thought like this, just entertain me for a minute. If your mind thought, for example, I'm not saying you have to believe this or not, that's between you and the creator. If your mind thought that the tree of knowledge of good and evil were choices, and then you chose the wrong choice because your conscience convicted you to go that direction, and then you found out that that was the wrong thing because of your own internal desire, that kind of reshapes the way that people even think now. Because now what they do now, instead of saying, and I'm not picking on LGBTQ people, most of them, at least in the Black community, have been uh, uh, like molested as children, and then they grapple with whatever's going on in their mind and began to perform those activities because their mind was disturbed as a child. However, they used to teach that that was a mental illness. Now they're teaching people, yo, you're born like that. Then my argument is then the rapist is born like that too, and the pedophile is too. Then the God of Israel can't condemn none of them. But that's how tricky the mind is. Let's keep changing the narrative around because we say we're born like this, nobody can do anything about it. It's just natural for us. Just like you were born a boy, then I was born this inward thing that I am. The mind is deceitful above all things. Now, these are people who are experts. They have master's degrees. They have doctorate degrees. They studied and teach in universities. They're deeply committed to their knowledges. And what have we learned from all of them all this time? That their mind is deceived also. Because it's deceitful above all things. Let's move on. Proverbs chapter 4. I heard somebody read this in one of the small groups. Proverbs chapter 4. We're talking about the heart. We're talking about the mind. The word heart and mind are synonymous. In Hebrew, the word should be leb, and the word is talking about the mind. See this little thing that pump blood? It may feel a way when you get an adrenaline rush. It may even tighten up when you feel like you're doing something wrong because it's interconnected to this thing right here. But that has to be guarded. It has to be guarded. I can't trust my mind. I know I can't trust it. Certain things I don't even want to be around. I don't trust my mind. So I don't entertain it. People say, hey, man, Moses, you want to come out? No, no, no. I don't want to be in that environment. And I've been away from some environments for a long time. So it actually more agitates me than entertains me. But I just know the way the mind works. They say birds of a feather do what?
Flock together.
Now, I always ask people, do you see eagles hanging out with doves? Nah, brother. Eagles and doves don't hang together. Do you see turkey vultures hanging out with parakeets? Nah, brother. They don't even rock together. Pigeons don't hang with hawks. They don't even spend time together. The hawk over there, the pigeon over there. And if the hawk get too close to the pigeon gone. So this ideal of who even you need to keep company with, because I'm keeping my fences guarded. And I've heard this is the logic, right? Because when I was coming up and we'd be out evangelizing, man, people in the club need to hear the word too. A word, a word. So you're gonna go there to make sure they hear the word, right? But in the meantime, you're gonna be shaking and grooving and getting phone numbers and all that, right? Because that's the way the mind works. But let's try this on society. If the people in the club want to hear the word, why don't they come to the environment we're in that they should be more uncomfortable with? So when she come in the mini skirt and he come with the necklace and the chest with the little hairs all out, why don't you come over here and we gonna make you feel uncomfortable because none of the women here dress like that. So you're gonna be keep pulling on your clothes and doing all this. Yeah, why don't you come here? Because the mind will convince you, yeah, man, go over there and they gotta hear the word too. It's deceitful. Proverbs 4:23.
I got it.
Yes, sir.
Watch over your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the sources of life.
Now, this is interesting because when I read uh, or when I come across people who study the Bible, or, maybe they claim they study the Bible, or have some fidelity to the Bible, who's, for example, excuse me, want to be rich. Man, Abraham was rich. Man, Yeshua said, man, to him that have shall be taken away, and more will be given to him that already have. Like they got all these Bible scriptures that make it say that they gonna be the one to make money. Man, Solomon said the hand of the diligent should be made rich. Sir, why do you want to be rich so bad? Why is that so important to you? Now, here's what the text says. Keep your heart with all diligence. So I know the hand of the diligent shall be made rich, but the diligent should also be doing what? Guarding his heart. You should guard your heart. You should put up a 10-foot wall around the heart with, just like with Jericho, these iron gates and uh, what do they call those things in the old movies where it used to be a swamp between
A
uh,
moat? A
yeah,
moat?
moat. Yeah, man. Put one of them moats. Like, look, man, I'm gonna pull the moat up, and the moat is this big drawbridge that is like 200 feet away, and the city I'm in surrounded by water. Man, you can't come over here. Yeah, we got a moat going on, and you can't swim across this into the moat because we got alligators in the moat. That's how bad we need to guard. We have to be diligent. It said, do it, keep your heart or guard your heart with all diligence. And why is it so important to do that? It said, because what comes out of it?
The issues of life.
What does that mean?
What would be your thoughts?
Yeah, the choices you make.
Yeah, yeah, the choices you make. It the choices you make and the seeds that are planted into your heart.
Mm.
Brother Brandon, go ahead. Yes, sir.
And when I think about the issues of life, I generally would say like the majority of the problems we find ourselves in, we can find ourselves at the root at some point when we're not guarding our heart, when we're doing certain things, or being distracted by certain elements and we find ourselves in a situation, oftentimes the root and cause is our failure to guard our heart. So the issues that we sometimes see in this life, we actually cause by not doing that.
Yes. And what that ideal is also pointing to is like the source or the issues or the outgoings. And here it is, it says Tot Sauf, the source, the outgoing, the border, a going out, um, escape from death, for example, or source of life. So this ideal of guarding the heart and what's coming out of it when they're saying like the issues of life, the very things that you tend to be concerned with rest right here in your heart. So in the better sheet, Eve or Howell was concerned about, well, I'm gonna look stupid, or it's more to learn, or I want to be like the creator. He didn't tell me everything. Well, I mean, he told you not to do such. So this concept of what's in the heart. Now, pay attention to this next verse we're reading. So you have to guard your heart. You have to put up a 30-foot fence. You need to put the moat wall. You have to, because the heart determines the actions. And when I say the heart, the word leb in Hebrew is the mind. It determines the actions, the things that you desire. And all of your desires, as I tell people all the time, were planted in your mind. When I hear people and say, man, man, God want me to pursue my dreams, man. I think he called me to be a musician or basketball player. Where you get that idea from? Somebody had you dribbling the ball from the time you was a kid. Somebody had you watching football from the time you was a kid. Somebody had you doing boxing from the time you was a kid, being a figure skater, singing. And you thought because you kept getting praise for that thing that you were good at, then that's what the creator called you to be. See, he don't care about you being no basketball player. Oh, Most High, let us win this soccer game tonight or the Super Bowl. He don't care about no sports games. Both teams are praying to win. So who do we really care wins? Like you see what I'm saying? Like that's not his concern. But my point is how did that get in a person's heart? Oh, he called me to do this thing. How did it get in the heart? Somebody planted it there. And the more you feed that thing that's planted there, the more it determines your actions. And the more your actions are determined by there, it's going to dictate what decisions you make. 2 Kings chapter 5.
I got it.
2 Kings chapter 5, and we're going to start at verse 19. We won't read the whole thing, but I want to pick it up at 5 and what did I say, 19?
Yeah.
I hope this is appropriate. Let me see.
This is the one about Gehazi.
Yes, sir. Yeah, let's read a little higher.
Okay.
So again, I'll paraphrase bringing us into it. If you have not read the account, it is a good read. So check it out. Maisha and I, we're reading through 2 Kings right now after finishing Isaiah. But a certain man came to Elisha the prophet, asking to be healed. He came and he brought all of this substance with him. And this is where the account is picking up. So let's start at verse 15.
And he returned to the man of Yahuwah, he and all his aides, and came and stood before him. And he said, indeed, now I know there is no Elohim in the earth, except in Israel. Now therefore, please take a gift from your servant. But he said, as the master lives before whom I stand, I will receive nothing. And he urged him to take it, but he refused.
So here is this man of Yah who was asked to pretty much heal a man. And notice that he didn't do it for profit or gain. He just healed the man because the man needed support, so he healed him. And he healed him by giving him instructions on what to do. Now, again, we won't read the whole account, but what he first did is he didn't even come out of his tent or house that he was living in and say, you came down with this whole great army, all these camels, all of this talents of silver. He came down with a lot of resources and say, hey, I'll pay for this service. And he said, no, no. Didn't even come out of his house, told his servant, man, go tell the man to go bathe in the water and he'll be fine. And the guy felt the way. And he felt the way because he said, we have better rivers where I'm from. And then his servant, who was with the military man, Naaman, said, listen, if he would have told you to do something great, would you have done it? And then he checked his heart because he needed to be healed. So if he would have said, if he would have claimed, I thought he'd come out and clap his hand and spin around in the circles, and then I would have did that. Yeah, no matter what he said, wouldn't have been to your benefit because you're in need. And then he checked his heart and he came back. And that's where it picks up, where he said, look, man, I don't want your money. Just take the healing and keep it moving. Continue reading if you would.
Verse 17. So Naaman said, then if not, please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth, for your servant will no longer offer either burnt offering or sacrifice to other Elohims, but to the master.
So he's telling him, listen, you healed me. I'm gonna stop even worshiping these pagan deities that I worship. And let me give you something. If you can take these 2 donkeys, essentially he didn't want to carry them back or whatever the case was. Keep going.
Verse 18. Yet in this thing may Yahuwah pardon your servant. When my master goes into the temple of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow down in the temple of Rimmon. When I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the master please pardon your servant in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then he said to him, go in peace. So he departed from him a short distance. Verse 20. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of Yahuwah, said, look, my master has spared Naaman this Syrian, while not receiving from his hands what he brought. But as the master lives, I will run after him and take something from him. So Gehazi pursued Naaman. When Naaman saw him running after him, he got down from the chariot to meet him and said, is all well? And he said, all is well. My master has sent me, saying, indeed, just now 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the mountains of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments. So Naaman said, please take 2 talents. And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of garments, and handed them 2 of his servants. And they carried them on ahead of him. When he came to the citadel, he took them from their hand and stored them away in the house. Then he let the men go, and they departed.
Keep going if you would.
Now he went in and stood before his master. Elisha said to him, where did you go, Gehazi? And he said, your servant did not go anywhere. Then he said to him, did not my heart go with you when the man turned back from his chariot to meet you? Is it time to receive money and to receive clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male and female servants? Therefore the leprosy of Naaman still shall cling to you and your descendants forever. And he went out from his presence leprous, as white as snow.
Again, snow must have been in the region because he says went out white as snow, right? So notice here, he said, not only did he go back to Naaman and rush to get these resources, because you know how the mind is, it's like, man, this brother, we barely out here eating. He got me eating lentils and bread. We stand at other people's house. Because, Elisha was staying in this woman's house for a period of time who was housing the prophet. So I suppose that Gehazi was staying there too. Man, this man got me wearing, I think Elisha, if I'm not mistaken, I know Elijah was wearing girdle like John the Baptist with camel skin, eating berries. And you got this great king servant who came with all of this money and this brother turning it down? Nah. Let me just get a little bit of it. So let me go tell a lie. Like just literally go tell a lie And then he came back and said he didn't even go anywhere. What's in your heart? Because notice what's in the heart is determined in the actions. What's in your heart that you would tell a lie so quickly? Why was it so important to get these resources from healing somebody that was sick? He was sick. He had a leprosy. His skin, it was a skin disease. Why was it so important for you to make money off of this? And he said, well, now you're going to be leprous. And he was leprous from then on out. And then you read a few chapters later, I think maybe we in chapter 12 now because we're reading through Second Kings. He was still his servant later. He just was walking around. I get the gist that he was like a darker pigment. Now he walking around looking like white. It's just like the ideal of it is just crazy. Hey man, wasn't that the guy? What happened to him? He was lying, man. So the leprosy jumped on him. But what's in your heart that makes you want to do that? Let's go to Psalms chapter 51. Psalms chapter 51. We're talking about guarding the heart. And in order to guard the heart, we have to be cognizant. What's in our heart that would drive us to go lie and cheat? Why would we go do that? Or why would Gehazi go do that? Psalms 51, and we will start at verse 7.
I got it.
Yes, sir. It's a lot of snow happening here. It's a lot of snow. Let's keep going. So Psalms 51, verse 7.
Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow.
Oh, a lot of snow references. See, you just read the Bible, man. Start giving you all time. They had to know. They had to have some snow to know what snow looked like. I mean, unless somebody brought snow from a faraway place, but it probably would have melted by the time you got there. So it's something, and maybe the word snow is something different. I give benefit of doubt. But yes, wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Uh-huh.
Make me hear joy and gladness, that the bones you have broken may rejoice. Hide your face from my sins and blot out all my iniquities. Create in me a clean heart, O Yahuwah, and renew a steadfast spirit within me.
So why is he asking for a clean heart to be created? Because the heart is desperately wicked. It is desperately deceitful. It will drive the mind to go do things that you can't even imagine. And when you look up, you would ask yourself, how did I get here? See, I didn't think my mind would ever take me certain places. People are like, oh man, I never do nothing like that. Man, listen, don't say what you wouldn't want to do. When I'm reading biblical accounts of people talking about, we ate her daughter yesterday, and now it was time to eat my daughter, she hid her daughter. What? Why would you eat a person? See, I don't want to know where my mind gonna take me. I'm just saying, listen, I pray I can not complain about eating the same food multiple days in a row because I'm just hungry. Like whatever goes into the stomach when you're hungry, you should be satisfied. But where would the mind take you? And he's saying here, creating me a clean heart. Why is it so necessary to have a clean heart? And renewing me a right ruach or right spirit. Because the mind is desperately wicked. And again, it's so wicked that we'll start pointing out other people and what they doing. Well, they don't never do such and such. Well, they be doing a bunch of sin and nothing ever happened to them. What do that have to do with you? See, you got to worry about you because when they're punished, that's their punishment. When you're punished, it's your punishment. So we asked about this clean heart. Why was Gehazi so pressed to go make money? Man, I'm tired of being second. I'm tired of just being his flunky and running around and getting his scrolls and sending messages for him. I want to make some money too. I want people to look upon me with prestige. And what began to happen? His heart deceived him. And the interesting thing is that the master who he served just simply said, he didn't kick him out from his service. He just simply said, now you're going to have the ailment of the man who just left. Because something was wrong with your heart. It needed to be made clean. Matthew chapter 12, verse 26.
I got it.
I don't know why I got all these scriptures. Matthew 12, verse 26. Is that it?
So Matthew 12 and 26. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then does his reign stand? And if I, by Beelzebub, do cast out demons, by whom do your sons cast them out? Because of this, they shall be your judges. But if I cast out demons by the spirit of Elohim, then the reign of Elohim has come upon you.
Mm-hmm.
Or how is one able to enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man?
So
And then
notice this. How can a man enter another man's house unless he first bind the strong man? What is he explaining here? Anybody know what he's explaining here?
Would it be something along the lines of someone let their guard down?
In one sense, yes.
it almost seems like he's saying like, how is one able to enter a strong man? So like, how are you able to like infiltrate a person that's supposed to be um walking in righteousness?
It also seems
Except
like
if
you
you,
gotta subdue somebody too.
Oh, let him finish and then go ahead, Joshua, after Jalen finish. Go ahead, Jalen.
yeah, no, I was just saying that it's almost as if it's saying like, how are you able to infiltrate a man that's supposed to be walking in righteousness, unless you first get something that's gonna stop him from doing what he's been doing, or stop
Mhm.
him from guarding himself the way he's been guarding.
Certainly. Joshua, what were you saying?
Yeah, my apologies, Jalen.
No, you're good.
I was just looking at it literally. When I think of binding someone, I think of subduing them, tying them down, restraining them in some sense. Um, so yeah, I'm thinking like it's just how can you? I forget exactly how you just read it, but you'd have to subdue or restrain somebody before you can enter their house. Otherwise, they're going to protect it.
Yeah, he's explaining that the essentially the if Satan is divided against himself, he can't stand. And then he begins to explain this concept that if through the process of me, meaning Yeshua, right, strong arming Satan and binding the devil, then I can cause healing to happen. But the devil himself got to be bound in order for me to take control. So this is part of what he elucidates in other texts, and I'll give you a quick example. The woman that was with issue of blood for 18 years, it says, shouldn't this woman who be bound by the devil be loosed? So he got to bind the devil to loose the woman because the woman was bound, and that simply the binding and loosing had to deal with her sickness or her ailment. Nothing, nothing major, just her sickness or ailment. So in this sense, healing came because the binding happened. And what is the major point here? Yes, you had to subdue the person first. So if something is in the mind or something is in the heart, then your good mind would have to be subdued for your evil thought to take present. The heart that's doing right, that's guarded and protected, the wall would have to be broken down first for deceit to have to creep in. This process is what is kind of being explained here. Now notice what he goes on to say. Keep going.
Yep. So I'll reread 29. It says, or how is one able to enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man, and then he shall plunder his house?
Now that strong man in this context is the devil or Satan. Like whatever Satan is, Satan had to be bound. Satan don't cast out Satan. He had to be bound for Yeshua to come in and do this healing. Kick him out the house, let him come in and do his work. Keep going.
Verse 30, he who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters abroad. Because of this, I say to you, all sin and blasphemy shall be forgiven men, but blasphemy against the Spirit shall not be forgiven men. And whoever speaks a word against the Son of Adam, it shall be forgiven him. But whoever speaks against the set apart spirit, it shall not be forgiven him, either in this age or in the age to come.
Uh-huh.
Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or else make the tree rotten and its fruit rotten. For a tree is known by its fruit.
Continue.
Verse 34, brood of adders, how are you able to speak what is good, being wicked? For the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart.
So notice again, the adder or the viper or the serpent was connected to the people. And notice what he says here. Out of the abundance of your heart, your mouth is speaking. So people are being healed and you're saying that's demonic. Something in your heart. Something is in your heart to say, and when you look at what was in the Pharisees' heart, now mind you, and I'll say it again, the Pharisees were your modern day common council, senators, congressmen. They weren't, and like mega church pastors essentially. Like they were a combination of those folks. They weren't like Joe Schmo people, right? So this ideal of their role and their position, their very position began to be threatened by this Nazarene coming around and teaching things that undermine their power and authority. And they said, look, if we don't stop this man, the Romans is going to take our seat in authority. What was in their heart? The allegiance with Rome and the money that they was making and the seat in authority. That was in their heart. And out of that abundance, they began to condemn him. Why? Because the heart is desperately wicked. When people were being healed, they set up a law to say, look, 6 days shall a person be healed. Don't come on the Sabbath day. Look, excuse me, if it was your child that needed to be healed, what difference would it make what day it was? If your child was blind, but something has to be in the heart to contrive that type of mechanism to say, nah, you can't come on this day. And what was really in the heart or in the mind was, man, if more people believe him, less people going to believe us, and then we won't have employment opportunities. We won't control the temple. So now we got to kill this man. But that is the way that the heart works. It contrives things that are not in your best interest, justifies them, and then tells you to go carry out the actions of them. So we read Matthew. We got a few more texts and then we'll transition out. Looks like a lot of texts. We won't go into each one of them. Psalms chapter 39. We'll speed it up. Psalms 39 139 verse 23. Speed round. One text apiece just about. Psalms 139 verse 23.
I got it.
Yes, sir.
139 and 23 says, search me, O El, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if an idolatrous way is in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
Why is it important for him to search your heart? Now, notice when he say try your heart, people read this like, oh, yeah, oh, create me a clean heart. Search my heart, God. You think he just searching it on Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock because you asked him to? He takes a magnifying glass and a flashlight and goes into the recesses of your heart on a daily, monthly, hourly, weekly, yearly, annual basis. And every time he finds something that's not like him, he's going to put you in a scenario to either bring that out or repent of it. Now, it's much easier when you repent of the things that's not like you. If it's in your heart, then he's going to keep putting you in a situation till you submit and break from that situation to be able to change the way you think about the matter. That's the way he works. In a future study, we're going to look at the ways of Yah. Like you actually have to get to know him like you get to know a new job. It may take you 2 or 3 or 4 years to get acclimated in a new job. Like you got to get to know a man or a woman that you plan on marrying. You really got to know the creator because he got his own separate ways. But here he's telling us, search me and know my heart. But what happens when he finds something in your heart that's not right? Then he'll present the scenario, set it up. Let me set this scenario up and see what the man gonna do. Because I told him, like, look, don't go do this thing. Again, I don't know what Bathsheba looks like, but I can take a small guess. And I don't know, but I can take a guess. if she made a man by just her visual appearance want to kill that man's husband, I'm saying she was probably like a 20 out of 10. Perfect physique, symmetrical face, certain height, all the right body parts. And that man looked at that woman and was like, yeah, no, man, that's such and such wife. Why did he still want her?
Mm.
What's in your heart, my guy? Why was that even a thing? It's your man's wife. It's not even like you didn't know the guy. He was in your military. What's in the heart? But he's saying, created me a clean heart and search your heart. So when he searched your heart, he also provided the opportunity. He provided the opportunity. Hey man, that's Uriah the Hittite's wife. Oh man, bad. I didn't know the woman was married. Let me correct my thought. Let me throw ashes in sackcloth because I even looked at another man's wife. But no, David kept going. So that idea of, and again, he later repented for it. But my point is that when he's searching to see if there's any wicked thing in you, he wants to be led in the right way, the way of everlasting. Matthew 19:22.
I got that one.
Yes, sir.
You want me to just read that verse or
Yeah,
read?
I think just that verse. I'll be doing these texts and
Okay. Verse 22. But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions.
okay. Yeah, we could have read the rest of it, but essentially, um, he told the man who had many possessions, sell all that you have and follow me. And he asked him, said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He said, look, I did all this stuff from the time I was a kid. He said, if that will be most mature, most perfect, then stop placing your resources that are first placing your heart before the kingdom of Yah. Like make your priority, seek ye first the kingdom and all of its righteousness, and then all things will be added to you. See, I'm not in a position, like again, I got a resource or two. So if I compare it to like people worldwide, I'm doing, better than that. If I compare it to like Jeff Bezos, then I'm probably, extremely poor. But you get the drift. If no matter what type of resources you had, if he asks you to give them up, what's the real problem?
Your heart.
Yeah, it's your heart. If he says sell your house and come follow me, well, nah, man, I've had this thing for a long. Like, man, what about why is that a problem? Because of what's in a man's heart. Their priorities and their most concerns is going to determine their actions. Now, let's look at Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6. A few more texts after this. Matthew chapter 6,
Got it.
and it should be verse 21.
Yep. For where your treasures is, there your heart shall be also.
Yeah, wherever your treasure is. Wherever your treasure is. The one man said, Master, I'll follow you wherever you go. Said, first, let me bury my dead father. So, all right, if your priority is your father, then go do that. But if you want to roll with me, then we're not going backwards. And then he said, the other man said, I'll follow you wherever you go. And he said, foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man have nowhere. Now, some people read that and say he was homeless. Carpenters aren't going to be homeless. Just this is not the way it works, right? He was a traveling itinerant preacher. Essentially, he was telling the man, if you're looking for safety and security, it's not always going to be that rolling with me. It's going to be some type of compromises. We may go into a city and get kicked out, and we might be sleeping under this tree tonight. And if you're looking for a place for security all the time, if that's in your heart, then you're not going to want to follow me. So many people, when they were confronted by him, left off from following him. He told some people, look, y'all only here because I'm feeding you, because that's what was in their heart. And they got offended. And when you get offended that easily, it's something in your heart. You really don't want to do this. And this is why Shaul asked, who shall separate us from the love of Elohim? Shall it be tribulation or strife or this or that? Like nothing should be able to separate you. Like once you get in tune to this message here, nothing should be able to divide you. Though people start falling around you. Like, man, my best friend was in this and he no longer in it. Man, kick rocks, man. And I'll keep reminding you, but I'm not. Remember Lot's wife. I can't get caught up in what you did. Let's look at Acts 5 and 3.
I got it.
Acts 5 and 3.
But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Ruach HaKodesh and keep back part of the price of the land for yourself?
Now, this was the same move essentially Gehazi did, cheating the system, telling a lie. This is the time when the body of Mashiach was coming together, bringing all their resources together and distributing them as people had need, selling their lands and surplus properties and this, that, and the third to commit themselves to the work of the growing body. The ecclesia, or the called out ones, the government was forming, the people were coming together. They were from all different cities. And one person said, hey, man, him and his wife, man, we're going to sell a house for 100,000, but we only going to give 50,000 to the church so we can keep the other 50 in our pocket. And he said, Kepha found out about it and asked the man about it, and he lied. And he said, well, why did Satan fill your heart? Now, again, I have to ask, does Satan fill the heart like I can feel a cup, this cup in here? Like, ooh, Satan just start filling his heart. Did it happen like that? No. I'm saying what was already in his heart was manifested. I don't think the devil jumped into his heart and filled it up and he went and told a lie. No, I think his priorities was centered around looking out for himself. Same thing that happened in the book of Genesis. We won't read Joshua chapter 7 for the sake of time, but that is the account of Achan, and he decided to sin by coveting the Babylonian garment. Why would you be coveting a garment? What was you going to do with it in the middle of the woods? Because some people left Egypt, but they never left the mentality that was in Egypt, which was, I can be superior to my neighbor. If I got on this fresh garment here and people look at me, I'm going to look better than they do. They walk around with these rags and flip-flops in the wilderness. But when they see me with this, when we get into the land, I'm going to have all the attention because that's what was in the heart. Last text we'll read from now is Luke chapter 12.
I got it.
There's a few that I call like favorite texts. And this is one of interest to me, and I would say it's one of the favorites because it's just interesting how this cut to the chase happens. 12, and what did I say, verse 10?
10 through 15.
Yeah. Let's start at verse 13.
Okay. Then one from the crowd said to him, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me.
Now, this is right after he was teaching about this parable of the rich man. And right after he began, or probably if he didn't teach it already, he was just about to teach it. And after this happens, notice this. He said, tell my brother to do what?
Divide the inheritance with me.
What is an inheritance supposed to be?
Physical possessions.
Of what?
Could be money.
For who?
For him.
No, who is it? Who is an inheritance for?
Oh, for the
For
children.
the firstborn son.
In one sense, for the firstborn son, but you're really supposed to leave it for who?
Is it the wife and the family and the kids?
No, it's supposed to be for all your children.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is the firstborn son, like he's supposed to get, pretty much the bulk of it, but the inheritance is supposed to be for all your children. When Abraham, he gave Isaac some, when he moved on with Ishmael, he gave Ishmael some resources. Then he had Keturah's 5 children. Man, they had some resources. They didn't walk away empty. And the man who said, tell my father now to give me my inheritance, and he went to go live with the pigs and all of that. His brothers, once he was gone, the rest of the resources was going to his brothers when their father died. Like, you got yours already, so we still here. Yeah, this stuff going in our pocket. That's what the inheritance was for. Because the proverb says, or the adage says in the Proverbs, a wise man leave an inheritance for his children's children. So notice what he's saying again. Read verse, what is that, 12, 13 again?
Yeah, read 13 again. Then one from the crowd said to him, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me.
Mm-hmm.
But he said to him, Man, who made me a judge or an arbiter over you? And he said to them, Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of things he possesses.
Can I tell you a secret that y'all might already know? The world teaches us that your very life does consist of the abundance of things that you possess. And if you don't have an abundance of things, people look at you like you don't have a life. Walk around and don't have a car. Man, I just catch the bus. People are like, oh, man, you 34 years old. What you doing catching a bus? Because you're supposed to have possessions. You don't have nowhere to stay. What do you mean you don't have nowhere to stay? Your very life should consist of possessions. That's what the world teaches. And if you don't have possessions, then you derided by people. But notice that the master cut straight to the point. Beware of covetousness. Why are you worried about this inheritance? Why is it so important for you to get? Because of what's in the heart. So this ideal that the heart needs to be guarded, it needs to be fenced in. You have to protect the issues. Like if you start to worry about, oh, you said, what am I going to eat tomorrow? Or how am I going to make my way? What's in your heart? Your heart is in concern. Your heart is in worry. Well, if I quit my job and do such a, then if I don't work on the Sabbath, I had people literally ask me for it. Is God going to pay my rent? Sheesh. And I'm saying that's a pretty damnable question to ask. I'm saying this entity that we call the Mighty One, he made a purple frog that's as big as like the palm of your hand that'll spit a poison out and paralyze your body. You don't think he can make sure that you got a place to stay? Why are you so concerned about that? Because it got to be you first. That's the deceit of the heart. It's desperately wicked. It has to be guarded in. It has to be protected. It has to know, look, if the Creator say, don't worry about stuff, just pray and fast and seek my face, then why are you worried? If he say, go in and take a city, why are you saying y'all can't do it? What's your real concern? The real concern at the end of the day is you don't have that much faith in the Creator. This is why, and as I'm closing, he says, O ye of little faith. And when you look up that word about little faith, you know what it points to? Oh, this is beautiful. The Greek word generally points to this ideal of faith that is not long lasting. It's like you lit a candle and the fuse went out too quick. So you had faith, that's what allowed you to walk on water, but you ain't have enough to finish the task because you didn't believe that deeply. So I'll pause there. See if there are any thoughts, questions, concerns, arguments.
I had a thought, Moshe.
Yes, sir.
It was just a few minutes ago when you had made mention of how this life has to do a lot with having possessions. And I think there's some correlation to what I'm about to say, but I was thinking about like when we feed our physical selves, when we consume a lot, we live a life of luxury. We can eat whenever we want. And when we fast, from a physical standpoint, if you fast long enough, your body begins to heal itself. It begins to purify the blood and start to kill off cancerous cells. And, basically when you go without all of these things that you think you have to eat all the time or consume all the time, you go through a process that's initially uncomfortable, but then you actually end up healing and growing in some senses that might not be apparent initially. And I think that that corresponds to some degree to the idea of having possessions or things or thinking you need in certain people. And oftentimes, if you isolate and refocus for, a short season, you kind of go through a similar process that might be different or uncomfortable, but in the long run, you end up, healing or growing in some aspects that you might not necessarily know up front. Um, and that was just kind of a thought I had when you had mentioned, um, having a lot of things. And oftentimes when we let go of those things, we end up creating room to grow in some sense. And I yield.
No, it's a good point. And in our circles, we used to talk, and sometimes we still talk about people who are possessed. And we think about possession in the sense of maybe like a demonic possession or a spiritual possession or voodoo and all the rest of that stuff. Excuse me. And I think that that has its application, but the reality also is people are possessed with possessions. If they don't have possessions, then they have to really put their mind in the position to constantly try to get more possessions. Because that's what the world teaches you, that your life very much consists of the abundance of things that you possess. And if you decide that, interestingly enough, you look at an item like a belonging or a property or this, that, and the third, Yeshua himself, when he walked around, he gave the man he knew was a thief the money bag. How concerned was he about somebody stealing? Like, think of it. Think of it. His mind was so not on the money, he gave it to Judas. He the one who collected the money when they went around. Your mind can't be on this planet and taking care of like, I gotta make sure I got a 6-bedroom house. He died poor. People like Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King didn't have no wealth when he died. Like, and the point I'm making is that, yeah, your mind can't be constantly enticed with the, now again, this is what the proverb says. If riches increase, set not thy heart upon them. Why is that important that it says? If they increase, set not your heart on them. Because they temporary, they ephemeral. They're not gonna last so long. And again, I'm not even saying that I want to be poor, like, I just want to be the poorest person on the planet. Douse me in all poverty. No, that's not, no. That's not what I'm asking for. But at the same time, the prophet said, don't make me rich lest I forget you. Yes, sir, Jordan.
Yeah, first foremost, thank you for the teaching tonight. Very, very good on this, the first of the 6-part series.
Was it
I
worth the wait, man?
it was worth the wait. I
Oh,
was chomping at the bit. I was like, okay, I was looking forward to Friday night Shabbat lessons. Because it's always, at least for me, it's very, very insightful and it always challenges me. And this is more one of those like uh, moral lessons. And so, in that same breath, I think one of the comments I was thinking of is we must also, because you talked a lot about guarding the heart more so for from external forces. I was also thinking about we must also kind of guard our heart from what's, or be careful what's in our heart, because you could put a moat up or you could put a wall up around your heart, but what do you have inside of your heart? That can be just as dangerous if it's deep seeds of evil. And so that's something else. I don't know if you're going to elaborate on that at part B or a later part or another series, but that was just something that kind of bubbled to the surface of my mind as you taught tonight.
hallelujah. Jalen, yes, sir. And one more thing, sorry. And Dejan, I know that you and my wife met and this, that, and third, but all newcomers have to say something too. Hopefully you're not asleep yet. But yes, sir, Jalen.
Yeah. So I just want to build on what Jordan was saying. I think, um, when it comes to matters of the heart, I've kind of been thinking about this a little bit. So it's great that that we had this lesson today. I think one of the ways, we talked about the external factors, but um, I think the internal factors are like way more powerful sometimes than like the internal things that we struggle with or that we are, that we wrestle with can sometimes be even stronger than the external factors once you get to a certain place in your life. So I'm like, when I think about it, it's I think being able to be honest with yourself and being able to take the time to self-reflect on, you know, the things that that you may struggle with, or the things um that you may be pre I don't know what that word is, predisposition to, is like imperative, and like something that we should be doing like on a weekly, daily basis, man, of just reflecting on, okay, what am I doing here? Like, how am I doing this task? What am I thinking about? All those things. So I think that we really got to be reflective and proactive about um the internal things. Because I think those are the things that, like you said, subconsciously, that you'll talk yourself into doing, you won't even know about it, like you said earlier. So um that's I really enjoyed that you brought that out. So told I for that.
Hallelujah. I would say that I agree that the internal things are detrimental and deeply troubling. And you don't want to build this fence around with all of this stuff in it. This is why the prophets and such would always talk about cleanse my heart, creating me a new heart, because that's what you want to fence in, the right and appropriate walls, fences, and bars to protect the new heart, the clean heart. The one that's not serving you, you don't want that. You want to get rid of that as much as possible, because the only outcome is that it's going to lead to your detriment. It's going to pull you in a direction. And sometimes it'll go and it'll come. It'll go and it'll come. And we used to talk about this analogy years ago. Um, for the person struggling with a thing, um, yeah, I mean, like, probably not the best example, but one of the elders used to use it with us. But the man who's struggling as an addict for something, and then they walk around the street and then they see the substance on the ground, they're prone to pick it up because it's something in their heart or their mind that they're wrestling with. The man who not thinking about that walk past like, oh, not even looking at something on the ground. Like, I don't know what that, I just saw a little bag on the ground, but that's not in the person's heart or their mind. So it begins to make it more pronounced because that's what a person's struggling with. And it's so many things that have to be guarded. I mean, again, some people it's pride. They just don't want to be told what to do. They just don't want to submit. They don't want to be told what to do. And some people it's fear. Well, I fear if I do this, this is gonna happen. Well, where's all that stuff coming from? And there's so many issues that this is why it's about out of it comes the issues of life. It's like the things that you're most concerned about rest in your mind. And it's a place that, yeah, if you're not careful and you're not casting out those imaginations and those doubts and those fears and those concerns, they're going to grow and be monsters and they're going to destroy you anyway. That's why we have to pray and get a clean heart. The prophet, Adoniyahu, yes, sir. I done woke the sleeping giant, my man.
Hey, I ain't sleep. I'm just over here reclining. No, but you literally just got finished saying what I was going to say. I'm just going to say it anyway, just so I could just nail the point down. But like when all the way back, when in Genesis, when it's looking at in Hava in the garden, she in her heart wanted to taste of that tree, and found out that it was good before she tasted it. Like she had a strong desire for that thing. And it said that she saw that it was good. But how did she know if it was good? Like that was that strong desire that she had in her heart, and then that's why she did it. And like you was just saying, I can't be tempted with something that I don't want. Like if you got some big old fried pork chops sitting in front of me, I don't want that. So you can't entice me with it. But if it's something else, like if it's like a piece of chicken, like a piece of that some fried chicken, and I know that that thing is like juicy, not the dried up kind of like the, you know how they be frying up them breasts and they be dry. But I know that you make the juicy ones, that the juice be like dripping out of that thing, like you don't set it in some brine or something for a day. Like you can entice me with that because I want it. And so when you think about like Yeshua said that out of the abundance of your heart does the mouth speak. Like you gonna manifest the things that's really inside of you. And like, so that manifestation could be like you getting these things, you desiring these things, you chasing after these things. So when we think about the idea of guarding your heart, you can't like that thing got to be purified first. Like what you was just saying, that thing got to be purified first. And then you guard that purified heart. Because what people out here doing is guarding that wicked heart, and they just staying wicked. Because the thing that they're protecting, the thing that they're putting a fence around, it never got fixed. And so your desires and your appetites and the things that you follow after is bad. And so the guarding part, that external, like the brother was saying, that the external things, yes, you got to guard the external things, but I'm saying that the most important thing is the internal things, because you only going to go and chase after the things that you already want anyway.
Yeah, well said. Definitely well said. It's the inward man. Well said. It's the inward man, the inward thoughts, and the inward desires. And this is why when we start coming to learn the scriptures, we have to check, like almost like do an audit. And an audit is when you go through and search. You put your finger under the table and run it there and say, oh man, yeah, I found this thing that's not like the creators I'm reading. You said don't eat these foods. Like, why do you still want to eat that? And some people want to do certain things because it's the peer pressure of their family. So they'll cave in. Some people just like, look, there's a study we'll do called Ashamed of the Gospel or Ashamed of the Basura. Some people don't want to tell nobody about this stuff. You know why? Because they don't want nobody to know that they're different. Nah, I don't, man. I don't tell nobody, man. I just other people. I let people do them. He actually commanded us to go tell other people. You were delivered, right? Then he said, go share that message. But some people are ashamed of that, meaning they don't want to share it with nobody else because they don't want to be embarrassed by these weird beliefs they have. And this is the serendipitous part of it. Again, not picking on homosexuals today, but just my point is, one of the Zacchaeans told me years ago, he said, man, the homosexual will throw a pride parade and march naked down the middle of a major street in a major city and share with everybody what they're doing. But somebody coming to this message is like, well, I'm going to just keep it to myself. Well, what's in your heart? Why would you really not want to share it with people? Do you really not believe it? Then there's others who, again, in their heart, oh, I want a husband, I want a wife. Like, yeah, but you don't just want one. Oh, wife is from the Lord. Like, yo, you just don't, no. Look, I've been married long enough to know, and been around people long enough to know. Yeah, you don't just want one. You want the right one. And I'm saying, man, it's a lot of females and a lot of males for that matter. It's not a lot of wives. And it ain't a lot of husbands. But if a person desire that so much, what do they do? They'll put themselves in a situation that's compromising because in their mind, they prioritize that over what the creator asked for them. So now they found themselves in a compromising situation. Well, like, yo, you could have just waited for the creator to deal with you appropriately and put you on the right course. But it's the desires of the heart. It's that, like the Maury was saying, is something in you that you saw this to be pleasant. He already said, don't find no pleasure in that. And that's the conundrum. Those are the things that, as folks, as individuals, as we walk, we got to get together. Because again, I can wax poetic, and I didn't bring up every example because one, I'm not going to think of every example. But some people want to be great in this world. Prestigious job title, such and such salary, driving such and such car. That's their heart. And I'm not even saying something wrong with having, because I'm not anti nice things. I mean, a couple of y'all been in my house before. It's don't have a moat, but it's comfortable. I mean, it's decent. It's a place to comfort. But we do have to, yeah, the point is we do have to pay attention to what is settling in our mind that we want. And we got to ask ourselves, how did it get there? How did that get there? Our fears, guard your heart, because fear is there. Worries, guard your heart, because worry is there. Anxiety, guard your heart, because anxiety is there. Desires, got to guard your heart, because desires is there. Go ahead, Jordan.
I think this question might be for the after party, and I think it might be safe to say we're in that time.
Oh, yeah. We are officially going into